So that means if they put them back, they can't put them back in the right place unless they got a chart.
Right.
They may have a chart, but in those days they didn't always have a chart, you know. And they stopped burying people up there probably in the 60s. I think I saw a picture of something going up there. Because in the 60s, this wasn't all, this was still woods all, you know, back up down that hill and all of that. It was still woods, you know. In fact, the people had chickens and everything out this way. Yeah, it was still a farm, you know. Okay, so anyway, the petition and the application and the petition for a pension not only help the government, but it helps us when we research. And a lot of the towns that were very important, independent, we mind our own business, we had our own local leadership, and it was, you would have to call it an ideal life. Because if you wasn't interacting with white people that much, you was having you know, you had your own little local sheriff, or constable, they used to call him a constable. In Arkansas in those days, they used to have the constable. And just imagine the life. You could go fish. Agriculture got up to where you can raise enough of everything you need. You got dirt floor in your place, and you put potatoes down there, and all of that, you know, because the ground, it's cold in the ground, so you can keep, you know, your stuff. That's what people used to do. They don't even remember the people know putting stuff in the ground. They say, well, you want to keep it cool, don't you want it to last? So that erasing history is something that the brothers talked about. First of all, the white cemeteries were kept up. The black cemeteries were kept up for a while, and then they were unkept. And there was trees growing all along them, and nobody even, after a generation has passed, the people don't even know that it was a cemetery. And one of these cemeteries that he was talking about was about 76 acres, I think, something like that. And so this thing on erasing history, we saw it with Hubert Harrison. That like when we was coming up in the movement, we didn't know about Hubert Harrison. We just didn't know. Although he was one of the most important people of that era, and one of the blackest, if not the blackest, and wrote stuff, so he wasn't like unknown to the people. But if you remember in the movie 10 Commandments, the movie Charleston Heston, when they said, okay, take Moses' name off every pylon, off everything, you know, in this empire, and never speak his name again, right? And then they said, so it shall be written, so it shall be done. Pretty soon, in those days, like any other time, you become a non-person. You become a non-people. Right. Did you find the Termination Act?
Yeah, I found it.
What does it say?
Let me see if I can see it. 1953, Congress seeks to abolish tribes, relocate American Indians. Congress passes a resolution beginning a federal policy of termination through which American Indian tribes will be disbanded and their lands sold. A companion policy of relocation moves Indians off reservations and into urban areas. Through these policies, the Bureau of Indian Affairs plans to move thousands of American Indian peoples to cities and urban jobs. Nothing else that Congress can do causes tribal members to lose more of their rights than termination. Termination is the ultimate weapon of Congress and ultimate fear of tribes. Despite its drastic effect, the Supreme Court has held that Congress has the power under the Commerce Clause to terminate a tribe. This is that last part was a quote by Stephen L. Pevar, The Rights of Indians and Tribes, the basic ACLU Guide to Indian and Tribal Rights, 1992.
Well, they called it right. You're terminated.
Yeah.
The Terminator, remember, what's the name, the Terminator?
Arnold Schwarzenegger.
You're terminated. That means you guys finished. You're terminated. You don't exist anymore. What about that tribe? What about that? You are now terminated. And, that land that we kind of let y'all keep, that's pretty good land. So we're going to get that back. In Oklahoma, can you imagine when they discovered oil in Oklahoma and Texas, how they did them Indian tribes? They did so much dirt. Sometime a white guy would marry an Indian woman and get her share, another one, right? And pretty soon they would have snatched up everything, because the poor Indian woman wouldn't know nothing,
That's today.
Yeah.
I just heard something on the radio this morning where they talked about like certain funding
Right.
to groups.
Right.
And the guy just said, the Native Americans get the lowest. And it was like, we're not meaning to do it. It's just that they just get the lowest amount of money, as if, like you said, they're non-people. They do it naturally.
Non-people and treated so bad. I ain't gonna say, Negroes been treated pretty bad.
Right.
But we have been treated as bad. Well, we would have to argue, we'd have to debate who was treated the worst. Right?
That's right.
But both of us,
Right.
now, over 170 years after the Civil War, and they still cannot fix none of this stuff. It's Jim Crow. In fact, they move one step forward and they take 5 steps backwards. Right now, we're living in a period of serious Jim Crow. Part of our educational process is to educate white people on the simple stuff that we've always talked about. That's why we read what Thomas Jefferson said, and we read the 13th Amendment, and a few more, the Fugitive Slave Act, right, and stuff like that. And the reason that they police the way they do is because of the over 100 and something years ago, 200 years, the Fugitive Slave Act. The police was invented for that reason.
Those were the principles they were founded on.
They founded
You
so.
can't get away from it. They just can't.
So when that police stop, and you mix it with the 13th Amendment and the chain gangs and all of those, what they got, why they need niggas to work? So they just round up every now and then. They go through and round up all the Negroes, right? And off to jail they go. And when they go to court, they get sentenced to 1 year at hard labor, 5 years at hard labor. See, you just don't hear that in the court much anymore. But that was part of all the sentence. I sentenced you to 5 years at hard labor. And that was big in the West and definitely in the South. That you sentenced to 5 years at hard labor. That's what they were just out about it. It wasn't hidden. Now when people read about it, they said, well, if you got the 1619 project, we're going to have the 1776 project. This is done. We just got to tell them, bring it on, the 1776 project. Yeah, that's what we're talking about. That you never meant to do any good to us. You never meant to do anything on the reservation. And why put people on reserves anyway? You know, why do that? Okay, well, that happened all over the world, put people on reservations unless it was just too big. Look, South Africa, Bantustans and all that. That's why all the people were all herded on those little shanty towns. The people don't realize how big Johannesburg is, but in Johannesburg is Soweto. Soweto, when I was there, was 4 million people. 4 million people. They talk about concentration camps that the Germans had. What about the Italians in the concentration camps they had? What about everybody had what they would call concentration camps, where the people were concentrated, put together, and that's where you are. The health, actually on Indonesian, that's one thing that's worse than even in the black community. It is the health of people, and they don't allow the sale of alcohol on reservations, but ringing all the reservations. You walk right across the street and go to the liquor store. That's just, the cruelty is just, let's say it's unnecessary. It's not necessary to have that type of cruelty. It's not necessary to break a people, take all their land, put them into poverty, and then give them blankets with smallpox on it, just for the heck of it. It's not necessary. It is satanic. And this is what the people, not that I was dealing with that in the subject, but the people are not mentioning God and Satan like they should be in these times. Like, okay, what do the Bible, the Quran, and all the religious books talk about? Talk about famine, right? Talk about disease, and talk about all earthquakes, and they might as well put fires in there. Only thing they'll say every now and then is there's floods of biblical proportions.
They slip that in.
That's it.
They slip it in.
But they don't say anything about this stuff is happening to us because something is going wrong and God don't like it. And how did it get this way? By a satanic program of capitalism. They don't talk in that language. It's all scientific language. Pretty soon, the people, they won't know the shaitan exists. They'll think, you're talking about the devil, a guy down there with the pitchfork and stuff. You know what I mean? They don't know they're talking about your internal struggle, jihad and nafs, the big struggle, right? Jihad and nafs, the jihad to control your desires, your visions, your wants, and all of those things, right? To set a limit on yourself, right? All that stuff is going away. And why? You can't, sometimes I don't even like listening to the news, but I have to listen to it to report on it. There's more frozen stuff that's dropping off up in the Arctic, that one big sheet. Well, they was making reference to it, and they said in another sheet, they were saying that they want to have a big reserve up there in Canada and preserve that. But this is the oldest ice field, freshwater thing, glaciers for humanity. And the people are arguing, just rich stuff under there. We gotta drill it out, and we gotta drill that out. You know what I mean? And then the sea channel, shoot, now is we can just send the boats through there, and they'll of course drop off all their oil and garbage and that pre-stein. This is the thing. See, right now we're at the stage where our job, inshallah, is to help preserve Allah's creation. That's part of our mission as the Khalifa. Things are off balance. Tagad, Tagut, the stream and the overflowed, right? It's exceeded, it's in excess. All right. So even when you listen to the motiversity type stuff, I listen to them a lot, but I listen to them different than other people. I listen to them to what they're not focusing on. They're focused on physical challenges to go to work out, to get bigger and stuff like that. All that stuff, right?
Yeah.
And then none of it focused on what we talk about is trying, what about the focus on the earth, right? What about the focus on clean water, clean air, and all of that? The biggest challenge is this. No, that was then the big challenge. Now, the big challenge is, do you have enough courage to face these systems? You know, none of them that you mentioned that. Yeah. All they challenge is themselves, and you gotta get up and work out, get up early in the morning, and right? And make sure you're not a weakling, and use all your discipline to make yourself stronger. And then they just growing big old muscles that they can't do that with the poles. You know, the stuff is unusable. You see the guys now?
Yeah, I see them guys.
No, when I was lifting weights, well, I still lift weights. But I mean, we were trying to get, in fact, we did it. We got a nice body. You could tell that it was bodybuilding. But now it's grotesque.
Yeah.
It's grotesque. It's not, why do you need, first you just have a bicep, then on top of that a little. Who needs 1, 2, 3, right? You can't use it for anything. It's visible. You do get physical stronger, but what are you going to use it for? You can't use it for anything. That's why in California, they took weights out of the prisons in California and many other prisons in the 90s. Because one of the main things that you had was to work out. I know in prison, boy, look at here, we always had a good workout program. People used to almost go to prison. The young guys, man, I'm going to YH, Youth Authority, California, to get big. And you got to think about the 50s and the early 60s. That's what people did, right?
You know, it was funny. I was way back in college. I had a friend that was kind of interested about that weightlifting thing. And I remember he was telling me about how it actually became a whole kind of school of thought on weightlifting and bodybuilding.
Yeah.
The prison, weightlifting system. It's its own, system as far as
no doubt about it. They're superior.
Yeah, they have their own system over there that they like.
The prison workout system. Remember, you got people that they're there all the time, and that's all they got to do.
Right.
They're not going to read a whole lot, and they got time to work out. And they got teams. The team I was with, if you don't have a team, you can get like you pull together a quick scrub game. If you're at the field house or something, and your regular workout crew, you can snatch a, hey, let's go. And it's the same thing. So the people that were like Steve Reeves and was Hercules in 1950 something. Steve Reeves looked like a pencil neck guy. He just looked like, he would be average. I was looking at the bodies. I just saw the first part of Spook That Stood by the Door the other day. And the family was watching. I said, look at those bodies. Those are from the 70s. So that's the way the human being used to look. No definition, no nothing. I said, look at them guys, because you had to have stripped down to your shorts and stand on the scale and all that, if you remember that scene.
Right, yeah, that's neat. Yeah.
Nowadays, there's no star in the movie. There's not, even a sissified actor is kind of buffed a little bit. He got a little arms, a little definition, a little chest, and he might have a six-pack. Some of them, Mel Gibson and them guys, he used to be really built just good. But they said, they showed pictures of his workout. He used to do, 4,000 sit-ups a day or something like that. You know what I mean? To have that six-pack.
Right.
Okay, but the point is, you can't use that for anything. You're not going to work. If you was going to work, maybe the machines would do it. There's nothing you could do to use those muscles except lift weights and get bigger. The point is, they're excessive. Everything on earth is now excessive. Like the inventions and everything exceed the needs, and they use super fertilizer. They use super insect killer. Because with all that corn, you're gonna have super, you know what I mean? Yeah. Insects, and you're gonna kill off the little sweetie pies. Insects and worms. So you gotta get it stronger and stronger. Pretty soon there's nothing else left. There's no biodiversity. Right. We used to talk right here like we have a creek at the house. Right by the house. You can't see that. There's no pollywogs, tadpoles, nothing in there. They're not there. You couldn't walk outside before, and maybe way out in the country they still have, but right here,